Welcome to Behind the Lectern. Since 2006, your host, Jeff Klein, has been working with speakers at all levels, from beginners to Toastmasters International Award winners, from experts to National Speaker Association Hall of Famers. In each episode, Jeff introduces you to some of these speakers as you learn about their speaker journey, how they got started, where they came from, where they're going, and more. Take the lessons they have learned on their way to help you with your own path to make speaking work for you. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody. Jeff Klein here with another episode of Behind the Lectern. I'm excited to welcome you for Valentine's episode. This is with Eco, the Wandering Love Mystic. Hey, Eco, how you doing?
Pretty good overall, Jeff. I appreciate you going and talking to me today on Valentine's Day, which is definitely about love and connection, and especially love of self. Excellent.
So, tell us a little bit about how this whole the love mystic gets started.
Sure. So it started for me a little over 18 years ago when I first started delving into really deeply diving into sex, love, and relationships. And for me, I wanted to go and figure out how relationships actually, how they worked, how they functioned, how to go and attract partners for myself. And within that, I found one of the first resources I came about was a book called Double Your Dating by David D'Angelo. And with that, there was a premise that was put forth of that there were women out there that I could go and approach, that I could go and say, I want to date you, I want to be sexual with you, and I don't want to be exclusive. And that there were women and other people out there that would actually be okay with that.
Got it.
And with that, it was my first introduction into ethical non-monogamy and being like, this is a thing that's possible. I haven't been born and raised in the Midwest, so I had no idea and didn't have any kind of concept for that.
Yeah, I should let everybody know we're going to be talking about some things today that are non-traditional. So yes. I don't think there's any children listening, but just there's our little disclaimer / warning. Mainly, this will be an adult content episode for Valentine's.
Yes, the content is for adults this particular time. Thank you for that. So from some of the things I learned from that book, I started doing some online dating, and from that attracted a woman who had put out a Craigslist ad when you still could go and do that for the personal ads that said, Prometheus was bound for all of eternity. This girl only wants to be tied up for a single lap. And from that, I wrote her back referencing the story of Prometheus from Greek mythology that she was talking about, telling her how I would go and bind her for her sins against humanity. I would stoke the fires within her, and by the end of the hour, she'd be begging for release, though not from her restraints.
Wow.
And that got her attention enough that I ended up getting together with her and we started dating. That was my first foray into the BDSM and kink realm, which I also found was a natural expression.
Not anything they teach in 7th grade or 3rd grade sex ed or whatever in school.
Not currently, no. At least not that I'm aware of as of yet. So within that, if we go and skip ahead for a while, I do more of my own personal dating and find out, okay, here's what I need, here's what I like and desire for myself. And going into that, I fall into being into doing relationship coaching and finding a passion and a calling in helping people go and dive into what it is that their heart and soul desires, helping them become okay with wanting what their heart wants.
We both know lots of coaches who teach people to be who they want to be and be who they are and ask for what they want, but they never really talk about the kind of things that you talk about.
And within the sexuality realm, it actually influences a lot of other areas of life, and people don't always recognize how that actually goes and comes across. When you have that certain confidence and have that congruency, it can make a huge difference in how you come across in other areas of your life, including as a speaker or in your business.
And this has very little to do with things like DISC. You can be a dominant as far as DISC goes. That's not the right. What does D stand for in DISC?
I'm less familiar with this system. I know of it.
I think it. I'll have to look it up. I want to say it does stand for dominant, but it's a different kind of dominant than in a BDSM dominant for sure.
Yes.
But being a dominant personality in the workplace and in daily life, where the D in DISC is all about the person who's in charge and the person who wants quick answers and doesn't deal with the messy details. And I'm listing all these things because in the DISC system, I am a high D, practically 100%, and then high I as well. And so I'm gonna have to look it up now for the. So we use the terms accurately here during the conversation with eco, but I want to make sure what I'm getting to. Yeah, D is dominance, I is influence, S is steadiness, and C is communicator, or let's see, something like that. And so what I'm getting at for folks is that the D dominance inside DISC doesn't determine somebody's sexual proclivities or preferences.
Not at all. One of the interesting things that I've discovered is that usually those who are at the top of an organization, like CEOs, and those who usually have to make a lot of decisions, they have a lot of power and control over their company. It's more common for them to actually in the bedroom to actually be more on the submissive side, because after spending like each day, every day, having to make a lot of big decisions or things that really affect people's lives, for a lot of them, it's like, I just want to surrender. I want to let go. I want to let someone else go and take control and me not have to go and think. So
right. And just so those people are jumping out of their chair, C is conscientiousness. So sorry, dominance, influence, steadiness, conscientiousness. And we see on like TV shows and things like that, where the CEO will have been, off at a dungeon or something, getting tied up or flogged or something like that. And that's exactly what you're talking about. They want to give up control because they're always in control every other time. Right. So the workplace personas while we're all, whole people and holistic people and all that, they don't relate to direct. There's not a direct correlation to the kind of conversation we're talking about and how people want to be in their marriage or in their bedroom.
Yeah, and while there isn't a direct correlation, it is definitely connected, because what I found is that when you are actually sexually satisfied, when it is that you are happy in your relationships, when it is that you feel confident that you actually have the love and support of those around you, and you're able to be congruent within yourself, it does come across in your business and in your work, how you come across in your presentations, how it is that you come across in the boardroom to go and people.
That's really important, Nico. The fact that whatever it is that satisfies you between two or more adults does make you a better person in public. If you're happy at home, you're a better boss, you're a better partner, you're a better team member, everything else. If once and again, some people struggle with getting comfortable with whatever that thing is that makes them happy. But and the other thing that came to my mind as we're talking about this is that that even when you're talking about somebody who enjoys pain or something like that, it's all done with love.
Mm-hmm. It is. It all comes down to, once again, consent, and that is a very pivotal thing, especially in the BDSM realm. And when I came across the kink realm 18 years ago, one of the things that kind of blew my mind was the idea that before any kind of play happens, that you come together as equals and negotiate what it is that you each want to experience and do with one another. And I thought, how much simpler would it be in dating life in general if we could actually just have this open, honest conversation of, here's the things that I like, here's the things that I'm curious about that I might want to go and try with you, and here are the things that are just going to upset me or piss me off, otherwise known as hard limits, so we're not going to go and do that.
Yeah, and I mean, they literally, and people don't realize this, have a contract. Not everybody, but a lot of people enter into an on-paper contract with those things you're talking about.
Some people do have that written out, yes. Others just go by verbal agreements. Other people do more of like a checklist, and there are some wonderful checklists they're out there of like different kind of activities, which is a useful thing for being able to delve into discovering what it is that you want, or
it was actually
think you might want to try.
Yeah, the first time that I had a real personality test, or not test, but anyway, personality study done, and I got this 8-page printout of all the things that and nothing to do with sexuality. Just here's how to be a good boss for Jeff. Here's how to be a good employee for Jeff. Here's how to work with Jeff. I'm like, can I give this to somebody before a first date?
You can.
So far I haven't really found a way to introduce that, but
mm-hmm.
but maybe I should.
Well, here's what I'll go and say. The woman who I spoke with that had that ad for the binding
just tie me up for an hour. Wanted.
Yeah, that at the end of that first date, she actually printed me out a 1-page little trifold, because she printed out, which literally had her likes, her curiosities, and her hard limits on it.
Wow.
And she told me that a former dominant of hers had her go and make that for him, and more for her own knowledge. And she said it was like one of the most challenging things, and also one of the most valuable things that she'd ever done for herself. And she literally, at the end of the day, handed me that piece of paper so I could actually know those things about her. And it's like,
wow,
that was amazing.
Yeah, well, and they, I think the term that's used in different alternative lifestyles is vanilla people, which is everybody else. Don't do any of that. You struggle, you wonder, you have painful sessions in your own head about what your date will like, or when you get to the point where the relationship turns sexual, and people aren't taught to ask questions.
And a big part of this is actually asking questions and being able to actually answer them. And what I have found in my work is that once I have done my inner work to discover this is what I like, this is what turns me on, this is what I desire, and I've also done the work for me being okay with what my heart wants, it becomes a lot easier to actually articulate those wants, needs, and desires to someone else. If you've not done that work before and someone asks you these questions, you're like, I don't know.
Right. And I guess it's okay to not know. I mean, we have to give people permission not to know as well. but it's also, it's okay to not know, but it's then additionally okay to ask.
Yes, it is. And that is one of the things that I go and deal with in the congruence part of becoming okay with wanting what your heart wants, of like having it actually be okay to ask these kind of questions, to talk about these kind of subjects. And because there's a lot of stuff that comes up from religion, from communities, from like family traditions, like, no, these are things that are just done behind closed doors. We don't talk about, we don't reference it ever. This is, private life. And like, okay, yes, you have a right to go in privacy. Yes, you don't have to share anything with anyone else that you don't want to. And I've also seen that, especially for a lot of feminine body people that I've worked with, who have been really good at making themselves into what they think the other person wanted, and not even allow themselves to ever delve into even thinking that they deserve to actually have any wants, needs, or desires themselves.
But that becomes a big topic.
It can, yes. And while the ideas of sexuality and consent can seem really simplistic on the surface, when you start delving into all the different possibilities, it gets quite complex. And where I love to work with people, my favorite kind of people to go and work with are those that have figured out enough that they're like, I've tried the heterosexual vanilla monogamous dating lifestyle and it's not really working for me. It's not really happy for me. And I can be like, here is the buffet of all the different things that is possible. Let's work with you to actually find out what you like, what you want, what you desire, and delve into that.
Yeah, in a completely confidential way.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, how did, kind of get back to the topic of the program, how did you discover that speaking was a way to spread your message, to tell people what, or to get exposure for eco?
Thank you. So with that, how to go and answer that question? where did that go and come into it? With that, I made a realization at one point that, or at least a story, which may or may not be true, that trying to go and save the world one lover at a time really was inefficient. and I eventually made a promising commitment to the divine that I was going to dedicate this lifetime to bringing forth this premise of enlightened consent, where everything consensual is honored, and honoring your authentic truth so you can have relationships that you love and thrive in, where that as long as you and the people that are directly involved are consenting and you're honoring your existing relationship agreements, that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or feels about what it is you're doing together. That if I was truly going to go and fulfill that mission and cause this paradigm shift in how humanity relates to sexuality and sexual expression, it would need to be done on a speaking level. There would need to be so much more exposure out into the world. And being on stage, being a speaker is one of the easiest ways and most practical ways I can think of to help spread a message, because there are only so many people that I can physically see one-on-one in any given day.
There you go.
Or year.
And how's that going so far?
It is getting more traction, and it is not where I would like to be as of yet.
Okay, well, that's a good answer. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So where do you think, or what's your starting point as far as the groups that are ready to hear this message? And do you want to be in front of groups that may not be ready to hear your message yet?
I do.
Okay.
Ultimately. And one of the things is that I have started creating my own platforms. for that. And it's really useful to be able to go and speak to other people's audiences and to be able to actually speak like you're giving me a platform here to go and speak, and an audience that may or may not be ready to hear this message. I don't know.
Yeah.
And, I can also have learned the skill sets of how to put together my own stages. Like in December of last year, I ran an Enlightened Consent Summit where I actually brought in other experts and other teachers, and actually had them go and help promote to go and create a stage where not only each of them got to go and have a stage and presence, but I also was able to go and share my viewpoints, share some of my points, and invite people to go in deeper with me as well.
And you promoted that to the, for lack of a better term, general audience. Mm-hmm. So you could, so people who were curious could check it out.
Correct. It was a live summit, and there are a lot of different kinds of stages, and depending upon what it is that you're going for, and one of the things that I'm kind of learning somewhat the hard way is that, as you're mentioning, not all audiences are necessarily ready to go and hear me for what I want to go and talk about, which is okay, and that's where they're at. And I'm learning to be a bit more discerning of what speaking opportunities that I want to go and speak. If you're brand new to it, I have a wonderful sales mentor, Eric Lofholm, who advocates for any time that you're given the opportunity to speak. And if you're not comfortable speaking yet, definitely take that up. After you're more comfortable speaking, you may want to hone it down to who are the people who I really want to go and hear this message and work with them best.
I just had an idea that it may be a great idea, it may be a terrible idea. But what if you had a talk titled, "The Most Uncomfortable Talk You'll Hear This Year"?
And I write that down.
Yeah, please write it down. And the premise of the talk, Eco, would be that Eco the Love Mystic will teach you a lot of the terms and definitions of things you may or may not have heard of and always wondered what they meant. So you would actually do sort of a glossary of, B and BDSM and, what's a fetish and, some things like that. Just 20 minutes of stories and definitions that'll make people chuckle, but also make them a little uncomfortable if they don't know about these things.
That sounds like a lot of fun to parts of me.
Yeah, and the beauty, and maybe the subtitle is something like "Alternative Love Defined." And so, but the people who say yes, how much fun could that be? Right? Imagine you get booked to speak to the American Businesswomen's Association with that topic, or the Cincinnati Rotary. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But by booking you, they're consenting to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be your only topic. It's just an idea of here's here's maybe the because obviously you can do a mainstream topic.
Oh yeah,
easily.
I was part of Toastmasters for like 6 months or a year.
Okay, go ahead and share some of your topic titles with us.
It was several years ago. I donated or from.
Well, I mean, now what are some of the topic titles now? Before I threw that idea at you.
Sure. Thank you for clarifying what you're asking for. A recent talk that I gave was a intro to energy sex. Okay. Which being able to go and connect and play with one another using our emotional and spiritual energies, and which is more in the tantric realm side of things. And with that, it can be useful as we've all been going through this pandemic for 2 years now or so.
God, it feels like forever, but yeah.
Something like that, and we may not be with the ones we want to go and be with. And what I've found is that one of the wonderful things about energy is that it can transmute and connect and have visceral impacts with people even over a computer screen. So you can actually virtually go and pleasure and even cause orgasms without ever physically touching people or taking off any clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a fun one that I just presented at, let's see, I think it was called Sensuality, Sex, and Orgasms. That was being put on by Dating Kinky.
What was one of your talks for your summit?
Let's see. At the summit, what did I actually do? Those were mainly focused on other speakers. That particular summit was for working with the sex educators, relationship coaches, and counter teachers.
Okay.
For that.
So you skipped yourself at your summit.
I kind of did. I put that together for me because I wanted to go and have those speakers and actually be like, I want to go and learn deeper into these subjects, and I don't want to have to pay like a dozen different teachers for it.
Sometimes that happens, but next time, don't forget to do a session yourself.
Right. So I do actually have a one-day summit that I'm going to be running myself. That is going to be coming up on March 5th, Saturday, March 5th, and that is going to be Homeward Bound: An Incredible Inward Journey.
Okay.
And with that, it's going to be a 6-hour, one-day virtual retreat where I'm working with people who have had the experience that they feel that they don't belong or they don't fit in. And often those people in these kind of lifestyles, or discovering that they are part of these lifestyles, have that experience that I don't fit in, I don't belong, I don't feel lovable or acceptable. And working with them to ultimately create a feeling of home within themselves and a feeling of belonging within themselves. So by the end of our time together, you can go anywhere that you want in the world and feel that you're at home. And regardless of who is or isn't around you, feel that you belong.
Nice. Yeah. And obviously you don't have to have an alternative bent to need that training.
You don't. You can be a vanilla heterosexual monogamous person, and they'll be just as valuable for you, because there's so much othering that is out there that we can all feel like we don't belong at times.
Right. So what kind of audiences are you, besides the where you go and make people uncomfortable? What are your the audiences you want to reach, Iko?
Well, the audiences that I would love to reach are those who are wanting to go deeper in their exploration of their love and what it is that they have with themselves, of really who they are. Self-love in a safe space is a beautiful way to go and put it.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I can say is my superpower is being able to work with someone who's uncomfortable in the realm of sex or sexual expression, and help bring them to a place where they feel that they belong, are accepted, and loved through my unconditional embrace of their authentic sexuality.
Okay. I'm making notes for the show notes.
Oh, sure.
Oh, that's good. That's really, say that again.
Oh, sure. So my superpower is I'm able to help bring someone who is uncomfortable with sex to a place where they feel that they belong, are loved and accepted through my unconditional embrace of their authentic sexuality.
Nice. Okay. And their authentic sexuality. Wow. You know, I can see a lot of people going, that's definitely something that'll attract the right people for sure. What else? What else should we know about you and your practice that you're here in now?
Sure. So one of the things that I'd like to go and share about is that there is more than just it's more than just me in my own singular practice. That last year I did found my nonprofit, Enlightened Consent Foundation. And we are out to cause a paradigm shift in how humanity relates to sexuality and sexual expression. Our explicit mission is to provide transformative experiences and supportive resources to those who identify as kinky, polyamorous, or LGBTQ+, so they get to experience being completely seen, honored, and loved.
Nice.
And part of the reasons why I choose those particular demographics is I'm in the Venn diagram in the middle of all of those.
Okay.
I identify as being queer, gender fluid, and what that means for me is that I have a strong feminine side and as well as a strong masculine side, and I get to honor both of those and present either masculine or feminine depending upon how I'm feeling at the day, and fluidly go back and forth between them. I'm also into BDSM. I am a switch, so I am both on the dominant side and also on the submissive side of things, so I can speak from experience for both of those. And I'm also polyamorous. One of the things that I learned the hard way from being with my ex-wife was that there is a spectrum, just like how people are heterosexual to homosexual. Mm-hmm. That there is also a separate spectrum, people being monogamous by nature on one side and being non-monogamous by nature on the other side of the spectrum. And my wife was on the monogamous side of the spectrum. I was on the non-monogamous side of the spectrum. And I got to see that when we were in a monogamous structure, I became miserable. And when we opened that up so I could be what I needed, she became miserable and unhappy.
And of course, it is a spectrum, and there are places you don't have to be at one end or the other. You can be, correct. And you can move around. You can
move around, and sometimes there's a parsing apart between what is it of where we think we are, or what is it that we taught that we should be, and finding what is it that my authentic truth is, what is it that my heart and soul crave, want, and desire.
And perhaps in 5 years, I'll want to be a little bit different.
Yes, this is all about an evolution.
Yeah.
It's not that, you're this one thing and only this one thing, and it's going to be that way for the rest of your life. There's always an expansion. That is part of the reason why in the kink realm, people are able to go and come together and renegotiate at any point, even if you're in long-standing DS relationships with one another. You can always renegotiate and be like, this is shifted, this has changed for me.
Well, and here's one thing that I find refreshing about and that's just the easiest word for me, alternative lifestyles or communities, is that a lot of it is truly refreshing in the things they're willing to talk about. But the flip side of that is, just like every other community, they have their own foibles and their own politics and their own blindsidedness, perhaps, or even a tolerant community has its own intolerances.
This is very true.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I also learned is when I first started in this 18 years ago, I thought they were all lumped together, and
Yeah.
being like, no, they're not. And being like, those who are LGBTQ plus, they have their own social standings and expectations. Those who are in the kink realm, they have their own social expectations and ways of going being. And then those who are in the ethically non-monogamous polyamorous realm, they have their own way of going and doing things.
And don't ever assume anything.
Nope.
But be willing to talk about it, right?
And we are, as a society, and where the younger generations are going a lot more into greater nuances of how they're identifying, like over 50% of people under 17, I think, are identifying as like some kind of queer or non-standard identity. And being able to have all these different nuances of being like, instead of visually looking at a person and being like, okay, based on how I see you and how you're dressed, you're this, being like, you have to actually ask.
Well, and part of that is that, unlike previous generations, there's options out there that I never heard of when I was a kid. Certainly, I had gay friends in high school, but it certainly never came up in junior high or elementary school like it does now. High school was when we figured all that stuff out, and things are different now. I have friends with twins who are now different genders from each other, identical twins who are now different genders from each other. Mm-hmm. And they're not they're not high school age yet.
Right. And this is one of the things that I will say, that this has been around and has been so for
for
a long time. I mean, there have been transgender people throughout history, basically, for thousands of years. Though the social acceptability and a willingness to go and actually accept and talk about these things, rather than trying to force them to conform to a binary expression to go and fit in and survive, is a much newer thing.
Right. Well, and the flip side is true. Just because there was a Boudica who was an amazing warrior queen doesn't mean she couldn't have been a straight woman who identified as a straight woman. The behaviors don't go with the labels.
Correct.
It's all about in who you are inside, that now people are able to talk about.
Right.
Which is mostly a good thing.
Mostly a good thing. Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, it's about getting to be in that discovery of, who am I now? Who am I deciding to be? What is it that I want in this now? And having it be okay for it to be potentially something different than what I used to want or used to desire.
Sure. Well, and now, this is going to be here's a controversial question, Iko.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I notice, and sometimes it's why there are some people who just feel like everybody has to know. What is that impetus that it's like everybody needs to know that I'm this label, that I'm this thing, whereas I never felt the need to declare my labels.
Well, so what I think I'm hearing the question is why are there some people that want to be so out and open and others don't? Or
why it doesn't affect anybody but the people in their personal life, for example, that somebody's bisexual. Mm-hmm. You're married, and then all of a sudden you're telling everybody you're bisexual. It's like, are you opening up your marriage to your gender to not, and usually the answer is no. Usually it's, I'm in a monogamous relationship with my spouse, but I want you to know I'm bi. Mm-hmm. I'm, and again, that's why I say it may be controversial. Why do I care? Why do I need to know about that?
It's a complex answer to a seemingly simple question.
Yeah, no, I know it's complex.
And there are a number of reasons why people decide to be out. One of the reasons I can go and say is that people want to be honored and recognized for who it is that they see themselves now, and can look to be in support and find camaraderie with that. And people wouldn't otherwise know unless you actually went and told them, and being like, hey, this is how I identify, and I want to be around other people who are either supportive of that or are like me, so I can talk about these things with them. Because there are some challenges that the LGBTQ plus community has that if you're a straight cis person, you don't have to go and deal with. I know for myself, like, some of the first times where I was dressing in feminine clothing out in public, and coming to your typical restroom that is gendered, of being like, males here, females here, and being like, okay, I was born in a male body, I'm presenting feminine, which one do I actually use?
Yeah, I can see how that could be an issue. But I mean, again, this hasn't happened to me personally. I've seen it more in advice columns and stuff. If my friend's wife decides it, or tells everybody it's important that she's bi, it doesn't change my relationship with her.
That's great that it doesn't with you. And there are some people who will have a very visceral reaction.
Yeah, I guess so.
To actually being like that. And if you happen to be, like, for example, a closeted gay person, and there is someone, or a small group of people who are always making gay jokes, or going bashing on them.
Yeah,
it's like being able to actually speak up and say, hey, I'm actually within this group, and we're not that way, and being able to actually speak up is something that can be very powerful.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely not advocating somebody not be who they are. I guess more of the question is just, and the truth is, it seems sometimes they're doing it just to be the center of attention, as opposed to, and I'm not talking about somebody who's closeted. I'm absolutely not talking about somebody being their authentic self. I'm talking about, I'm married to this guy. I have no intention of having extramarital sex with anybody of any gender, but oh, by the way, I like women too. To me, that's just, again, so now I can say, isn't she a hot chick? And you can agree. I mean, it doesn't change your life. It doesn't change my life. You're not changing. You're not going to become anything. It just sometimes it seems that it's a self-fulfill. If it makes you happy to come out and do you, then okay, fine.
And something that comes up for me as you're restating this question is that, once again, it goes back to the communication, having discussion, being like, hey, I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that with me. Thank you for the courage of that. Thank you for trusting me with that information that you may not have shared with anyone. I'm curious, why was this important for you to go and share with me?
Right. Yeah. What do you want me to do with that?
and I'm imagining, as you brought up the same example similar times, you may have had this similar,
No, I've just read this more than once. I've read this more than once in some of the advice columns. And, how do I handle the people who now are, who tell me that's wrong? It's like, well, if you knew when you said it that somebody was going to give you friction about it.
Maybe. And I can't speak to the the ultimate motivations for those people.
Right.
You know, there are some people who like to go and squat.
Yeah. It was unfair to ask the question the way I did. It just again, I read a lot of advice columns in Slate, and a lot of them have gone in that direction lately over the last few years. And I guess, you know what, it's the same. It's not this. It's similar to people who are adopted and are desperate to find some connection to their birth families. Mm-hmm. It's about who you see yourself as, and what you need to be a complete person inside, so that you can be a complete person to everybody else. And so, and again, it becomes a you do you thing.
And that's a good attitude to go and take overall, is like, hey, you know, if this is part of how you identify, and this is what makes you happy and feel whole and complete, beautiful. In general, I am supportive of that.
Yeah, and that's where I come from. I support you being you. I'm not sure why I need to care about that or know about that. Maybe that's too much information for me, but it doesn't change how I feel about you.
Yeah, and it may not have that much of a visceral impact on your life. What I can go and say is that there is a universal need to be understood, and for something that someone is either admitting to themselves or discovering about themselves. Often it can be like, hey, I'm really excited. I'm actually discovering this about myself, and I want to tell other people this is what I'm discovering about myself, in part from what I imagine looking to go and fulfill that need to be understood. Being like, I just understood this about myself. I would like you to understand this about me, even if it doesn't really impact our direct relationship with each other.
Right. Okay. Well, and you know, it may be this is going too far, but it may be like somebody saying, well, you know, I happen to be a switch and I'm into BDSM. I just wanted you to know. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, okay. Thank you for the information. Right. I mean, are you asking me to No, I'm not asking you to participate. I'm just figured you should know since you're my friend. Okay. Thanks. I mean, really.
And just being heard can be very liberating. Just being able to be like, I can go and actually talk about this, and I don't have to keep it buried in secret. I'm not bad, evil, vile, wrong.
Thank you for that.
Having that.
I think that's worth saying again.
Yeah.
That for some people, that declaring it really is beneficial to them, to be able to declare it without being judged or put down or anything else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I remember a little over 3 years ago, about 3.5 years ago at this point, for when I was in the personal growth program in a communications course. And with that, at the very end of the course, I did something very unusual for me at that point in my life. Is I actually shaved off the beard that I'd had for over 4 years.
Okay.
And I put on a skirt and a blouse and pantyhose, and I went to the completion of that event dressed femininely for the first time in public.
Wow,
which
good for
a part
you.
of me was terrified by.
I bet, sure.
And I had no idea how people would react. And I literally, when I went to go and show myself off and like stood up at the mic to go and speak, I literally got a standing ovation. And
yeah,
it was absolutely amazing to have that kind of validation and appreciation of a part of myself that I was starting to embrace for the first time in my adult life. And it was so valuable to me to have that kind of public acknowledgement of being like, yeah, that this was actually okay.
And congratulations on finding the right community where you felt comfortable doing that, even though you were nervous. But the truth is, you found the right community for that to happen for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And yeah, having having a supportive environment is really key. I found to
Oh yeah,
being who you are.
and I was, trying to be a little bit of a rabble rouser earlier, but the truth is, I'm super grateful that I'm one of those people that folks feel comfortable coming out to in all kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's I used to be married or I used, whatever it is, people come out to me about themselves because they understand that they get a vibe that I'm somebody who's not going to change how I feel about them because of whatever it is. And I'm grateful that that's who I am and people recognize that. It makes my world a richer place.
It does. And that is actually how, in part, I kind of fell into the relationship coaching that I've been doing for over a decade, because I had grown myself to be able to cultivate that feeling of safety around me to the point where I kept having person after person go and say, I've never shared this before with anyone, and da 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 da. And they start sharing some of their most intimate desires of their heart and their truths.
All right. So how do people reach out to ECO?
Sure. So first off, you can go to my personal website, which is enlightenedconsent.net. If you want to find out more about my nonprofit, the Enlightened Consent Foundation, that is enlightenedconsent.org.
Okay. Do you have any free, material informational material for people to tap into?
Yes, I do. I actually have a checklist for people that I can go and provide the link for, which that is a checklist for getting to know your current desires.
Yeah, put that in the chat and I can share it with the show notes. Mm-hmm. But can they get it through the Enlightened Consent website also?
Through the Enlightened Consent website, I think the current promotion I have going on with them right now is as part of the Mystic side, I do actually tarot readings as well.
Okay.
And so they can get a free 30-minute tarot reading with me to actually delve into what it is that they want and need in what may be blocking them in their love life at this point.
Okay. ECO at enlightenedconsent.net.
Actually, if you just email me at enlightenedconsent@gmail.com is the best email address for me.
Okay. And I'm going to encourage you to call your web person today and get ECO at enlightenedconsent.net to forward to your Gmail. And what a great episode this was. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been an honor, and I've really enjoyed this time with you, Jeff.
Thanks for joining us on Behind the Lectern. You can find an archive of our episodes at behindthelectern.com. You can also access useful speaking information at speakercoop.com/education. Join us next time for another great speaker journey with an expert and our host, Jeff Klein. We'll catch you next time.